Let me recap what we've looked at, because from the moment that the eternal Son of God entered into space and time, and he forever, at that moment, he forever became a human. So when Christ, the eternal Son of God, entered into our space and our time, and that's an important concept that I want to build on. If you're into science fiction, you're going to get this pretty quick. But if you're not, I'm going to try and unpack it a little bit more slowly for you. But when Christ entered from the dimension of eternity into this dimension, everything changed. And he became a human forever. All right, as a child, as we've seen, as a child, Jesus grew and developed, note these words, physically, emotionally, intellectually, just like any other child. So what that tells us is that Christ's humanity was genuine. It wasn't a show in the sense of I'm going to look like a human, talk like a human, act like a human, but really I'm the eternal Son of God only. And this became a discussion in about the 6th century at a place called Chalcedon, when they tried to figure out, now, was Jesus part man, part God? How did that work? And they concluded this, and I'll be sort of referring to it a bit later, that when Jesus became incarnate, in other words, became human, that he was 100% human and 100% God. And we might go, well, hang on a minute, how does that work? And the answer is, it's a mystery, but we know it's true. There's lots of mysteries in this life. There's lots of things we don't understand, and I'm talking to men now particularly. There's lots of things we don't understand, men, and you know what I'm talking about. And yet we just accept that it is the way it is. And I have lived most of my married life with 3 daughters and a wife, and my wife is also female, so you'll understand when I talk about some of the deepest mysteries of life, often being females. So we now go to Luke chapter 2, verse 52, just to back this up, and it says this, and Jesus increased in wisdom and in stature, so there's your physically, and in favour with God and man. So he increased in wisdom. So there was a development of Christ that happened that was just normal. So when Jesus grew into an adult, he faced every temptation common to men. Now, I've put in there common to men in particular because he was a man. Every temptation that a man faces, Jesus also faced. And we sometimes think, yeah, but he was God in the flesh, he was so holy. Not only did he face it, he was exposed directly to the onslaught of Satan's worst and best that he could inflict as far as temptation on Jesus. We read this in Hebrews chapter 2, verse 17. Therefore, he had to be made like his brothers. Now, brothers, not his siblings, but actually people, us human beings, in every respect, so that he might become a merciful, faithful high priest in the service of God to make propitiation, which means he stood in proxy. That means he took your place for the sins of the people. So Jesus Christ experienced every temptation. He had to be made in every way like us, and yet without sin. And so he experienced the full onslaught of temptation. So by the time he was 30 years of age, he had never sinned, and he began his ministry. And we know that he began his ministry immediately. He went out after he was baptized by John. He went out into the wilderness and had another onslaught of temptation, and yet he still didn't sin. The devil was not able to get him to sin at all.
We hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a like. If you'd like to see more, hit the subscribe button. For more information about our church, head over to lagana.org.